darkness of the forest, where the rays of the sun never reach, there lives a terrible monster. He goes out hunting every night to find a new victim. No one knows what he looks like, but everyone has heard his screams and footsteps in the dark. One day, a group of friends went hiking in the forest. They didn't know about the danger that lurked in the dark. When they set up camp and made a bonfire, they heard strange noises from behind the trees. It was the footsteps of a monster that was approaching them. The friends tried to escape, but the monster was faster. He started hunting each of them, one by one. They ran and screamed, but no one could escape from his claws. When they found the camp in the morning, all the friends were dead. Their bodies were mutilated and mutilated. No one knew what happened in the dark of the forest, but everyone knew that a terrible monster lived there. Some people decided to check if all this is really happening in the monster forest. They went there equipped to the teeth and ready for any challenges. When they arrived in the forest, they started looking for traces of the monster, but no trace was found. They continued their search, but everything was quiet and peaceful. They decided to set up camp and spend the night in the forest. But nothing happened. No monster appeared. The next morning they returned home, disappointed and surprised by the absence of the monster. But there are those who still believe in the existence of a monster. They claim that a monster can only appear when people are not waiting for it to appear. Some people decided not to stop there and continued exploring the monster forest. They began to study its territory in more detail, installing cameras and traps. And then one day, they finally saw a monster. He was huge and scary, with sharp teeth and fangs, but he didn't attack them. He just walked past them as if he didn't notice them. This confirmed the theory that the monster appears only when people are not waiting for it to appear. And now they had proof that the monster forest really exists. Some of the researchers decided to continue their research, but with more caution. And others decided to stop there and leave the monster forest alone. But regardless of whether they continue their research or not, the monster forest will remain a mystery and a place that attracts curiosity and a desire to learn more.
The Smithson family lived in a quiet town surrounded by a dense forest. They were ordinary people who never suspected what was waiting for them. One day, on the night of the full moon, strange things began to happen. At first, there were faint sounds, rustling and knocking on the walls. But gradually these noises became louder and more threatening. Night after night, dark forces infiltrated the Smithsons' home. They heard whispers and ominous laughter, but when they checked the rooms, they found no one. It felt like the spirits were chasing them, watching from the shadows. The Smithson family was intimidated and harassed. They hired psychics and performed rituals, but nothing helped. The forces of evil only intensified. Every night seemed worse than the last. Their nerves were to the limit, and sleep and peace became alien concepts. One day, in utter despair, they turned to an old sorcerer about whom there were rumors in the city. He offered them a solution. According to him, they needed to find and hide an artifact that held power over these evil forces. The family went in search of the artifact, scouring the depths of the tangled forest paths. Along the way, they encountered ghosts and the dead who tried to stop them. But they didn't give up. Eventually, they found an artifact, a gloomy statue covered in dust and fear. They hid it in the deepest corner of their house, hoping that it would stop the darkness. But they were wrong. The darkness was stronger. She penetrated into every corner of the house and took control. The Smithson family was deprived of light and hope. They realized that they could not defeat evil and resigned themselves to their fate. Now every night, the Smithsons' dark house is filled with malicious laughter and screams. Their souls are captured by these dark forces that will never allow them to leave this nightmarish world. Local residents, hearing about the terrible events that took place in the Smithsons' house, decided not to approach him. But over time, people began to doubt the veracity of these stories. They announced that they were ready to verify the veracity of these rumors and investigate the mysterious incidents that accompanied the Smithson family. A few brave souls decided on an expedition to the Smithson house. They armed themselves with flashlights, cameras, and recording devices. Gradually climbing the stairs, they felt that the air was getting colder and tension was in the air. When they entered the house, they felt that they were accompanied by invisible eyes. The sounds and rustling started again, but this time they were much louder and more eerie. Their lanterns flickered and shadows played on the walls as if they had come to life. While they were exploring each room, they found an abandoned room in the deepest corner of the house. The walls were covered with dust and cobwebs. In the center of the room stood a gloomy statue, exactly the same artifact that the Smithson family tried to hide. However, when they approached the statue, they felt that their strength was leaving. Sinister laughter filled the room, and the statue began to move. She began to radiate dark energy, enveloping the expedition. All their attempts to escape were in vain. The darkness swallowed them one by one. Imprisoned in this house, they realized that they were now part of this terrifying legend. Their souls were now attached to this house, and they became new victims of its sinister essence. Despite all the warnings and legends, some people could not resist the temptation and decided to explore the Smithson house even deeper. Among them was a team of paranormal researchers who were confident that they could unravel the mysteries of this place and find a way to free the captive souls. They arrived at the house armed with state-of-the-art equipment to detect signs of supernatural activity. The team included cameras, geophones, thermometers, and audio devices. From the very beginning of their research, they encountered unusual phenomena. Shadows moved along the walls, devices began to register electromagnetic pulses. Their records were filled with mysterious voices and whispers. Diving deeper, the team found a hidden underground room that seemed to be the source of evil. Inside, there were walls covered in blood and ancient symbols carved into the stone. The impending darkness came from the statue that stood on the altar. They tried to study the statue and its energy flow, hoping to find a weak spot. But instead, the statue came to life and unleashed its sinister power. Paranormal researchers found themselves locked in a room surrounded by sinister entities. They had no choice but to resist this evil. They used all their equipment, holy water, candles, and amulets to contain the sinister forces. Their battle continued night after night, and every day they lost more and more strength. Finally, they found a way to weaken the statue and destroy its influence. Merging together, they created a powerful protective barrier that was able to repel the attacks of evil back. When the statue was destroyed, the dark entity that dominated the Smithsons' house also disappeared. The captive souls were released, and their torments finally stopped. The story of a team of paranormal researchers who were able to defeat evil has become a legend in the city. Now no one dares to invade the Smithsons' house, and it remains deserted and abandoned, covered with a veil of mystery and horror.
Once in a dark and abandoned mansion built on the outskirts of the city, strange and sinister events began to occur. Residents of the city heard strange sounds from this house, footsteps on creaking stairs and vague whispers, but no one dared to go inside, as rumors that the mansion was cursed spread quickly. However, among the desperate and curious were those who could not resist the temptation and decided to solve the mystery of this place. A group of young adventurers gathered in front of the house, armed with lanterns, cameras, and courage. When they entered the mansion, they were overcome by a feeling of coldness and gloom. The air smelled of an atmosphere of antiquity and desolation. As they walked through the moonlit corridors, they heard the soft rustling and creaking of wooden floors. The situation inside became increasingly tense and unbearable. As they progressed, they came across rooms filled with antiques and dusty objects. They saw shadows sliding along the walls and sensed uninvited guests who were watching them from invisible spaces. When they reached the top floor, they found a locked door that seemed to lead to a secret room. Feeling the throb of horror, they decided to open the door and reveal the last mysterious puzzle. A terrible sight awaited them in the room. Strange symbols and bloody footprints were painted on the walls. In the center of the room was an antique bed, on which lay a distorted body. It seemed that the soul of this place was imprinted in this gloomy room. Suddenly, the doors slammed behind them, and they were locked. Fear gripped them when they heard whispers and laughter surrounding them from all sides. The dark entity wanted to capture their souls and add them to its collection. They tried to get to the exit, but every door they opened led to a new room of horror. Time and space began to distort, and they realized that they were trapped in an intricate network of dark forces and would not be able to escape from it. After a few hours that seemed like an eternity, they found themselves in the center of a room with a bed. A dark entity was approaching them, ready to devour their souls forever. In a last attempt to escape, they gathered all their strength and used the artifact they found in the house. Suddenly, light entered the room, and the dark entity disappeared into the darkness. They got out of the mansion. Their bodies were overcome with trembling and fatigue. They realized that they would never return to this place again, and that they had experienced horrors that they would never forget. The story of this sinister mansion has become a warning to those who would like to explore its secrets. It remains deserted and cursed, reminding everyone that some secrets are better left untouched. Ever since the team of adventurers left the cursed mansion, no one dared to approach it anymore. The legend that the spirits of the sinister house haunt anyone who dares to enter has only intensified. The townspeople avoided this place, trying not to mention it even in conversations. However, there was one brave girl named Alice. She was a paranormal researcher and didn't believe in curses and ghosts. Considering all this to be just a myth, she decided to check the veracity of the legend and expose the predators who used the house for their dark purposes. So with a camera and a dictaphone in her hands, Alice approached the sinister mansion. As she walked inside, she felt the unusual cold atmosphere that surrounded the house. As she walked through the corridors, she listened carefully to every sound, hoping to hear at least something supernatural. As she progressed, Alice came across artifacts left behind by previous researchers who were trying to expose the secrets of the house. In rooms filled with dust and empty furniture, she saw reflections and shadows, but nothing unusual happened. When Alice reached the top floor, she felt the presence of some dark energy. She followed the sensation and found herself in front of a closed door, from behind which strange sounds and whispers could be heard. Not believing in curses, Alice resolutely opened the door. She was stunned by what she saw. In front of her stretched a long corridor with many doors, each of which led to a new room of horror. The walls were covered with symbols and ancient writings that she couldn't read. Alice's heart beat faster, but she didn't give up and decided to continue her research. In every room, she found evidence that strange events had really taken place here. Photos showed mysterious figures and glowing outlines, and whispers and incomprehensible voices were heard on the recordings of the dictaphone. Gradually, Alice began to feel that she was being watched. Shadows began to move along the walls, and the air became even colder. She realized that the mansion's curse was valid. Suddenly, the door behind Alice closed with a bang, and all the rooms around began to pulse and emit ominous sounds. Evil entities surrounded her, preparing to devour her soul. However, despite her fear, Alice did not give up. She remembered the ancient symbols on the walls and decided to use them to her advantage. She began to cast protective spells and draw symbols on the floor, creating a barrier against evil. The forces of evil began to retreat, and their aggression weakened. Alice took advantage of this moment to get out of the mansion. When she came out, she was crippled and exhausted, but she was able to defeat the evil. Alice told the locals about her experience, warning them about the danger that lurked in the cursed house. Since then, the mansion has remained a restricted area, and its history has become a legend, intimidating the unwary and curious. People remembered Alice's story, and now they knew that there was always light in the dark, unless they were afraid to fight with her.